Hello and welcome to another AQA GCSE revision video. In this video we're looking at paper 1H of the May 2017 past papers. This is the 8300 series. It's the first paper in the higher tier. It's a non-calculator paper, so we're not allowed to use calculators. And we're picking up in question 29, which reads, simplify 2 sine 45 degrees minus tan 45 degrees over 4 tan 60 degrees. Give your answer in the form of root A minus root B all over C, where A, B and C are integers. And this is on a non-calculator paper. Okay, that's just enough to make you run out of the exam room screaming, I swear. Okay, so assuming that you have done your unit circle, then this is actually a fairly simple case of knowing what sine 45 degrees, tan 45 degrees and tan 60 degrees is. And then it's just a case of a bit of surds and a bit of simplification and you're away. Otherwise, this is going to take a little bit of thought. Okay, so 2 times sine 45 degrees. So if we start thinking in terms of what do we mean by the sine of 45 degrees? Well, if we take a right angled triangle, and we've got 45 degrees as the angle, and we've got a hypotenuse of 1, then the opposite is sine 45 degrees. Okay, so, the other thing is, because it's 45 degrees, the adjacent is actually the same length as the opposite. That's the thing about 45-degree angle. It goes up by as much as it goes across. So this must also be sine 45 degrees. Could also be cos 45 degrees, which, by the way, that just means that the tangent of 45 degrees must be 1, because opposite over adjacent is tan theta, so the tangent of 45 degrees is always 1. So it's good to note that the tan of 45 degrees is always 1. Now, as for the sine of 45 degrees, we've got Pythagoras' theorem tells us that a squared plus b squared equals 1, where a squared is sine 45 degrees, and b squared is also sine 45 degrees. And that's equal to 1. So that means 2 times sine 45 degrees. Oh, sorry, that should be 1 squared. Not that it matters, because 1 squared is 1. So 2 times sine 45 degrees squared is equal to 1 squared. So sine 45 degrees squared is equal to 1 divided by 2. So sine 45 degrees is equal to the square root of 1/2, which we could also rewrite with a little bit of surds as 1 over the square root of 2. Or we could rewrite it as, if we multiply by root 2 over root 2. By the way, we can say 1 over root 2 because the square root of 1 is 1 and the square root of 2 is the square root of 2. So that's 1 over root 2. And if we multiply top and bottom by root 2, we get root 2 over 2. So the sine of 45 degrees is root 2 over 2. And we already know tan 45 degrees is 1. We just need to know what the tangent of 60 degrees is. So if we get rid of our working out, and we just get our solution now, sine 45 degrees is equal to 1. Now for 60 degrees, if we construct an equilateral triangle, because it's an equilateral triangle, all three angles have to be 60 degrees. And all three lengths are the same. And we're going to say that all three lengths are 1 unit. Now, if we cut this exactly in half, then we've got a nice little right-angled triangle where this length is a half, and this angle is now 30 degrees. So right now we know that the sine of 30 degrees is equal to a half. But we can also say that the cosine of 60 degrees is also a half, because that's the adjacent. Not that we need that, but it's good to know. Now, the sine of 60 degrees is going to be this length here, which is also the cosine of 30 degrees. Now what's this length? Well, again, we can use Pythagoras' theorem. Let's say this is h for the height of the triangle, and let's say h squared plus this length here is a half squared is equal to 1 squared, which is the hypotenuse. That's just Pythagoras' theorem again. Now h squared is equal to the sine of 60 degrees. Which when squared plus, and this is a half squared, so that's 1 squared, which is 1, and 2 squared is 4, so that's 1 over 4, is equal to 1 squared, which is 1. Okay, so sine 60 degrees squared is equal to 1 minus a quarter, which is equal to 3/4. So the sine of 60 degrees is equal to the square root of 3/4. Well, the square root of 3 is root 3. Divided by the square root of 4, which is 2, so it's root 3 over 2. So sine 60 degrees is equal to root 3 over 2. Not that we need it, but the cosine of 30 degrees, that'll still be h again, is the cosine of 30 degrees, because this is 30 degrees and this is the cosine of 30 degrees is the adjacent. So the cosine of 30 degrees is also equal to root 3 over 2. Okay, so we can get rid of our working. Now the tangent of 60 degrees is equal to the sine of 60 degrees divided by the cosine of 60 degrees, which is equal to, well, the sine of 60 degrees is root 3 over 2 divided by the cosine of 60 degrees, which is 1/2. To divide by fraction, we invert and multiply, so that's root 3 over 2 times 1/2. So we can get rid of that bit on the bottom. Root 3 over 2 times 1/2. I'm sorry, did I say times 1/2? I meant times 2. If you're dividing by a half, you're multiplying by 2. Because invert and multiply, so instead of dividing by half, it's multiplied by 2 over 1. So root 3 times 2 is 2 root 3 divided by 2. 2's cancel, and we're just left with root 3. So the tangent of 60 degrees is root 3. So the tan of 60 degrees is equal to root 3. Now you could have saved yourself an awful lot of time if you already knew that before going into the exam, but you can work them out from first principles if you've got time. Okay, so simplify 2 sine 45 degrees minus tan 45 degrees over 4 tan 60. So that's, I'm actually going to write that out, 2 sine 45 degrees minus tan 45 degrees over 4 tan 60 is equal to, well, that's 2 times root 2 over 2 minus 1 divided by 4 times root 3. Well, the 2's can cancel. 2 times root 2 over 2 is just root 2. So this is equal to root 2 minus 1 over 4 root 3. And if we do a bit of surds, we can just multiply by root 3 over root 3 to rationalise the denominator. So this ends up with root 2 minus, well, let's say root 3 times root 2 minus 1 all over 4 times root 3 times root 3. Well, root 3 times root 2 is the square root of 3 times 2, which is the square root of 6. And root 3 times 1 is root 3. And then that's divided by, well, root 3 times root 3 is just 3. So this is 4 times 3, which is 12. So our answer is root 6 minus root 3 all over 12. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. If you're taking your GCSEs this year, I'd like to wish you every success with your revision and every success with your exams, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.